Good news, you're here just in time. Here's another Laneway Talks.
G'day Rob, welcome to another episode of Laneway Talks. How are you?
I'm good, thanks Vince. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Now, this week I've got two kind of topics I wanted to talk about. One I've alerted you to, and the other one is about the budget, which I haven't alerted you to, but you would know about. The first one, let's put the budget to second because I don't value that as much, quite frankly. That's just hot air, like all governments. But if we go to what kind of spoke online about, and that is these theories going around about Spotify, how it's operating, whether it's money laundering, whether the algorithms have any relationship to allowing artists to break themselves, and get access to millions of viewers or listeners. You had a view of the interview I was referring to. What were you?
I've got it. The Ted Goyer interview with Rick Beato.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of insights in there. Give me your thoughts on it, and then I'll comment myself.
I really like it from the point of view that Ted Goyer and Rick Beato. I'm a big fan of Rick's blog. Have been for a long time. I've referenced it a few times in my own research. They seem to be intelligent and well-informed people, and they're both musicians with degrees, and they're well-studied. So I think they're pretty on the money because they are well-researched. It's not speculation and it's not rhetoric. It's kind of as much fact as you can get. But as he said, it's very hard to know what's really going on with AI.
Well, let's home in on something. Home in on what he spoke about in the artists that he couldn't track down who had millions of streams and were across multiple Spotify curated playlists, which was very strange. What do you think about that?
It's just, for me, it kind of conjured up, well, it's a farce. It's just not real, and it's essentially Spotify alone in their own pockets with their own bots pretending to be artists and taking.
Well, that's if it's true. That's if it's true. Let's be careful there. If that's true, yes.
If it's true, yeah. The evidence that he seemed to present, what is his name? Joanne R.
Yeah, it was very powerful, wasn't it?
Yeah, Joanne R. I've never even heard of the guy. And he's using 656 different aliases.
Unbelievable. I think it was it 450 million streams or something?
Yeah, on 144 different official Spotify playlists and reaching 62 million streams.
Don't you think, Rob, with someone like Spotify, an organisation like Spotify, that has the resources and has the power to research that kind of stuff, if he couldn't get to the bottom of who is this artist, you'd think they'd get to the bottom of it and they'd bang it off and get rid of it. Otherwise, they're suggesting it's real, but he couldn't find out who the artist was.
But then he said one of the tracks on Spotify had gotten 4 or 5 million plays, and then he found the same track on YouTube.
That's it.
Had 100 plays.
Now, doesn't that tell you the story, eh?
Absolutely. It's not real. Well, that's what I assume that the point he's getting at without really saying it.
If I remember correctly, did he say that one of them had gotten hundreds of millions of streams, correct?
4 to 5 million.
Was it 4 to 5 million?
Yep.
Okay. I thought he'd mentioned one there, but maybe that's across multiple hundreds of millions. If you're talking, we've got to take an average between ad-funded revenue that you get off Spotify and premium listener revenue. But if you'd had, say, 4 or 5 million streams, that would bring you in about, $20,000 to $30,000.
Yep.
There's about 20 to 30,000. Now, if we suggest that's one artist, how many more? I'm sure when he started the discussion, he said there was it represented hundreds of millions. Now that's probably across multiple. So if we went into the hundreds of millions, that money, let's just do the maths. you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, that if it was Spotify doing it, well, remember, they're taking it right from the core, so it's just advertising revenue they don't have to pay out, and it's part of the premium accounts they don't have to pay out. So that's that. If it's someone else doing it, and they're allowing it to happen, and it's money laundering, as they suggested. So
they did, yeah.
They suggested it could be money laundering. Great money laundering technique to do and put the money. Yeah, well, get the bots. I suppose you got to pay for the bots and all that to set it up and get it. That doesn't happen free of charge. But if that was to happen, then say you're taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Well, that's great. That money's been washed, and that's the end of it. Now, let's think about. You might go, wow, millions or hundreds of millions. But I'm going to give you an example. I was listening to Empire of the Sun this morning, local act. Yeah, I know, they've been going for 20 years. But they get 23.5 million listeners a month. That's listeners. So those listeners could listen to those songs 10 times each a month, which is pretty normal. So that's 230 million. A month. That's one artist. So if we think about that and we see what is happening, money laundering could quite easily be occurring and quite big money coming out. And, it probably gets me back to, well, what are we doing with, and I think what they said with Laneway Red, and what they said was, what you've got is these organisations were started in the back room, they then become corporations, and then they're owned by, huger corporations, and then the record companies are involved. And there's the talk that, well, as they say in there, they discuss that who's running the music industry? Well, it's Apple and Spotify, Deezer and all that. The record companies aren't running anything. They're completely been taken over by those sites, so they need to buy into them to make sure they've got some form of control too, because that's another form of, abuse, I think, to musicians in itself with the majors. But, then you get something like Laneway Red, which we're going to release. And it comes down to, and I think they made the comment too, Rob, how much money is enough money, say from the organisation, say Spotify. How much is enough profit? Well, then that gets down to who owns it, and you've got to feed the beast. And then there's this business of, shareholders, and shareholders live off those dividends and, all that kind of crap. And so with Laneway Red, which is we're in the final stages of negotiations and getting everything ready, and we're either looking at a 15th of June release or a 30th of June release. It's one of the two. And so it's all hands on deck at the moment, getting it ready. But it is about giving back to the musicians. What will be the telling factor there after 12 months, after we build mass with that, is we are hoping to give 85% of all funds back to the artists. So there's 15% to run the business. And it might be squeezed a bit more, but that's what we really want to do, and we want to be transparent about it. And as I've said in the past too, transparent in the way the artist can market through that platform to their core audience, which you cannot do anywhere else. So Spotify, control that and hold it very tight to their chest. You don't know what's going on with algorithms, or when you market with marquee, you don't really know. Because
there's no transparency.
No, none at all. They are running the whole show. So if they're running a sham, they're sham. Now, they did say in that article that, this might sound like conspiracy theories. And it does. A lot of people go, oh, wow, that sounds, you're just in a conspiracy theory discussion. But I think you probably would get the vibe from me over the last 6 months that I've often said that there's real issues, and there's nothing real about it, and that gets back to Google too, and that's YouTube.
I think the big thing that I got out of it, Ted Goyer says, is the people that are running everything at the moment, and he says about this happens every 200 years. It's like what is happening is it's not good for the music culture. We've got to look after the music culture. The people that are running these big corporations are not musicians. And I've said
correct.
that all the way along. It's like these people are fantastic AI people, they're fantastic techs, and what they're doing is they're feeding their own beast, but by doing that, and they're maximising their profits and their income. And as Ted said, God bless them. I hope they have nice corporate jets and yachts and the whole nine yards, but what they're doing is not good for the music culture. And that macro that he was talking about has been repeated in history every 200 odd years, where things are just getting completely flat and boring, and that's kind of the point we're at. And the thing that is going on and benefiting for that is the microculture, which is what you're talking about, like Laneway Red, independent artists, everybody doing it for the good of the music culture, which is what you're talking about. And that was a really pertinent point for me that both Ted and Rick talked about, that it's got to come back to the artist and got to come back to how the artist keeps working in the face of this adversity, because eventually the creatives are going to come out on top. And that's happened throughout history, time and time again.
I agree with you, and I think that, can I believe that AI will be developing songs in the future? Well, that's just frightening to think, because you're talking about the demise of the human race, because, well, that would be computers coming up with tracks.
But it won't happen because, as Ted said, like, when he talks to people, he goes, who's listening to AI? Music generated by AI. He's going, what's your favourite genre of music? And he's never had one conversation with anyone that says, AI is my favourite genre. So it's not going to last. They put themselves in a corner. They're just regurgitating the same tripe and minimalising everything. And people don't want that. They want new, fresh, creative. They want to be stimulated.
Look, that's probably, I think that can be expanded out into general society. And I think whether we look at governments and political parties today, I'm bored, totally bored, I won't use the other words, totally bored with all political parties. I just can't get to grips with it anymore. Nothing excites me about them. They talk the same. It's a circus.
They're playing games.
Yeah, they will never answer a question, will they, Rob? Never.
No, they won't.
No, and then the game continues with the journalist who's asking the question, says you haven't answered the question, and then they still skirt around it. And so then the journalist goes, okay, we'll move on to the next question. It's like, but you just said to that person, you didn't answer the question. And then we're moving to the next question. So the journalists are complicit in it.
But investigative journalists disappeared 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree.
You've just got man.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
haven't got any talent in that pool of interviewers anymore. Because
I'm with you.
And I had those lectures at uni. We had ABC presenters, from all of those big current affairs shows, saying they were the last of the line 10 years ago, and there's no investigative journalism anymore. But, that's just, those things go in cycles. It's happening, as, once again, Ted said, it's happening in movies, it's happening in journalism, it's happening in book publishing, and, they're watering it down so much that it can't last.
Well, as we say, what came out of that interview, whether the algorithms are complete shite on certain areas in there to, is Spotify making its own money? Is there money laundering going on? Is the music industry in control, or are the techs in control? So it was a very good article. Now, I wanted to push that across, Rob, to the budget that just occurred. You and me spoke. We spoke about this actually a couple of weeks ago, I think, and this comes down to funding for the music industry. And I think I might have discussed it, you with the state government there, me, the state government here in Victoria. And I see they've gone here, the music biz have gone, music relief in the federal budget. I had another big chuckle and laugh. I read the article in the Music Network, right? I read it. Yep. So superficial, full of no detail, skirts around everything, and it's all about handouts. And if you go back to, what I spoke about a couple of weeks ago about Regurgitator's manager, Paul, who said, festivals, why are we supporting festivals? They're private companies running, commercial enterprises, the festival itself. What the hell are we supporting that for? If we want to get to the, what they should be doing. So here they're talking I think $8.6 million being allocated to funding to support live music venues and festivals, showcasing Australian performers.
Is that federal or state?
Federal.
Yeah, I've got the state South Australian Parliament, Andrew Michaels, hosted last week. The South Australian government is renowned for its extraordinary arts and culture, and the Malinauskas government is committed to cementing its legacy. And they've got here, that's why we've invested $35 million to upgrade the festival theatre, $8 million for the Adelaide Fringe, an additional $8 million to support small and medium arts organisations, an additional $2.3 million for the Adelaide Festival, an additional $2 million to make the Adelaide Film Festival an annual event, plus a further $2 million to support the creation of new films.
I'm not sure there's any arts over there that's actually funding itself, is there? Not when I hear all that.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. $5.2 million to bring more television production to South Australia in partnership with the ABC, the government, of course, and $10 million to support the live music industry. That's just state. So,
oh, God, look, it just goes on. One of the things I was going to bring up with this is that, they go through this and, again, no detail. It's all macro, and the journalist has no detail because he has, as you said, no investigative journalism happening here. And, talks about Splendour in the Grass closing and, the zoo going and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, these are private businesses. So why don't we get behind, on a really serious level as a government, local content rules for radio, and now there's local content rules for television, for vision. I don't know how that applies with audio. Okay, so, the backing music and all that. And why don't we get behind that? Because that's a real start that has never actually got a kickstart. I know somebody in the industry that is consulting in that area. He has said that it is a complete farce by the radio networks. They skirt around it and get around any rules by multiple methods, and therefore don't get the quota right, and we should be increasing that quota. And I would suggest 10 to 20% is no problem. Are you telling me that we don't have 10 or 20% of listeners that want to listen to Australian music, or that Australian music artists are not good enough to be heard? We know that's not true. They are good enough. So we need that. That's really a headline. They could make that happen. The second one is the issue of, for example, Taylor Swift doing her shows and having no local artist as a support act. Well, that's just unacceptable.
The biggest tour.
Yeah.
The biggest tour in the world.
Yeah, all they could talk about is how much money she brought in and all that. But hold on. Well, therefore, why couldn't you have a local artist? Now, usually what they pay is $1,000 per show. So you either got to do it on your own bat, or your record company has to support you. But that has happened from year dot. But you're getting in front of, say it's a Rod Laver, 10,000. In front of hers it was 50 or 60 or 70,000 per show. So, but you're getting in front. So that's worth gold. So, yeah, you need to support it a bit. But that's what we need to happen. We need that. We need to get to the front line of making it more advantageous for artists to be able to play at the local pub without the pub being shut down because of noise levels. Or, apartments next door that have come in after the fact and go, it's too loud. We need to get that infrastructure right and make it. I did have a think yesterday, Rob, about an artist who we're working with, and they, they really want to get a lot of gigs, and I go, well, it's not what it was 40 years ago where it was all about gigs. It's now about online, getting that right, and then the gigs will follow. And you need to not worry about playing live. You need to get real about, we need Facebook shares, we need Facebook likes, we need Facebook comments, we need YouTube comments and the like. And So the way that you're going about is, being popular is changing, but not significantly and not differently to what's probably happened. You talked about every 200 years, every 20 years it's happening. There's always these, the ecosystem of music is around the edges changing every 20 years. So you've got to mould yourself to it.
Well, that's the Ted Goyer and Rick Beato say about it's a 60-year cycle from when the Beatles came out. 50, 60 or 70-year cycle, yeah, what the Beatles were doing. And, if you look back when that's 1960. So we're kind of on the end of that whole cycle, about to start a new cycle of that, which is we're in, 2024 now. We're starting to see that cycle repeat, and where commercial music is lessening, and the complexity of music, decade of decade, is right to the point now where most of the hit songs are 4 chords. And if you're lucky, some of them are 3, as Beato pointed out. And everything's gone back to the basics like that. So I think that cycle that you're talking about and the way that we get across to our audience, all that's about to change as well. Well, it is changing because of the absolute ridiculousness of the Spotify event that we're discussing, how everything's online. I mean, and for people to be able to get their music out, they have to come back on a micro level to get direct to their audience.
One of the comments here, Rob, is Canberra's pledge is this is from the Music Network, Canberra's pledge is a timely and important step toward establishing sustainable careers for local artists on our shores. That was a comment that came from ARIA and PPCA CEO Annabelle Hurd. That's her comment in there. And I thought, what are you kidding me? What? So the sustainable careers for local artists has to be based on government support, because that's what you're telling me. Then it says here, the commitment will support a vital channel for discovery. I want to know, see if you can understand this, channel for discovery, ensuring our talented up-and-coming artists, as well as our established artists, get in front of new and larger audiences. For a channel for discovery. I'm not sure what they mean, ensuring our talent. And then it goes, Untitled Group, they talk about, yada, 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 and then go, and welcomes the Revive Live backing of $7.9 million committed over 4 years to support people with disability access and participate in the creative arts. Well, I would have thought we should make it law that, therefore, that a certain percentage of either your workers at festivals or these shows should be people with a disability. Or you should be doing that as an organisation anyway to participate in society to include those people who have a disability. I would have thought that was kind of, because if there's a job that they could do, why wouldn't you? And why do we have to fund it? Because to me, that will just be abused. That the money that goes to that part of it will just be abused. So, and as the NDIS has been very clearly shown, is being abused. That's why Bill Shorten has been cutting back in certain areas, because he said it was being abused, and they're trying to clean that up. Anyway, I see things like that. I think, well, I mean, it's all macro. There's no detail to anything. And then they go, well, we don't have the detail yet. I wonder when you will get it, and will it ever come out?
Yeah.
Or does it go to, you've said this before, does it go to certain sectors, in the music industry, and that's it, people in the know?
Well, I think it does, because it seems to be the same people repeating the same old patterns over and over again. But, I mean, that...
APRA, AMCOS once again call for sustainable long-term measures to ensure the viability of the live music venues and festivals. Are you kidding?
So what was that on? What you saw?
Well, this is an article on the Music Network.
Okay.
More needs to be done. APRA AMCOS once again calls for a sustainable long-term measure to ensure the viability. Well, hold on. How about first we force somehow that on public networks like radio and TV, and you're forcing a percentage of local music that is actually audited and they're held to account to make sure. Because one thing I can say for sure is anything that we work with, especially in the heritage market that we're in, if it's had radio airplay and sustainable radio airplay and, chartered and whatever, the access to the audience is so much greater. It's a fact. It is, because people have heard it all before, so they listen to it and they react with it. So therefore, putting it, I know I don't listen to radio at the moment myself, but that doesn't matter. Someone does, because they're still operating. What about playlists and the like online? A bit harder to control, but there's got to be something. Anyway, I think that there's just so much hot air and talk, and all these people get behind it all, and then I wonder, well, who's actually getting the money, Rob?
Yeah, that's what you need to see a spreadsheet of, don't you?
Yeah.
Like where it's actually landed and how much difference it's really made, because at the moment it's just, oh, wow, it's fantastic, move on to the next point, but hang on. We haven't really found out what's going on. But it's the same with AI, isn't it?
Well, there's another thing here. It says the publication of the government's National Cultural Policy, which details a 5-year plan to renew and revive Australia's arts, entertainment and cultural sector. Are you kidding me? To revive it? Was it not doing too well, Rob? Like any other part, the cafe down the street that got totally blasted by COVID lockdowns, which now have been proven to should never have happened, and that those local premiers in each state didn't have the power to do. We look forward to seeing the findings of the report from the House of Reps Standing Committee Inquiry. Here we go. Standing Committee Inquiry into the challenges and opportunities within the Australian live music industry. It just absorb that. So we've got another inquiry. Does anything ever happen from these inquiries? We pay for those. They're politicians who then sit in these inquiries with no power, of course, to do anything, and sit in there and interview people and then write I don't know how they do it too. They come up with a 400-page report. It's like a whole booklet, and if you see it on the news, they flick through it to show you, oh, look at all these pages. It's fantastic. There's a lot in there, I wonder if you get anything if you read it. I know I'm being sarcastic about it, but I don't believe they ever achieve anything at all. In this budget, was there anything really done to help the Indigenous issues that we've got at the moment? I didn't hear any. A few of the commentators come up and said, well, there wasn't anything there. That we've got a real problem there. We need to look at that area. Anyway, I see a lot of this stuff and I just find it laughable. It's hot air. It's certain people that earn a living from working within these sectors, which are all macro-based, no micro. And we'll probably never see any results from any of that. What we need is another ACDC who brings in millions of dollars. Of course, people would say, but hold on, they're probably based in Monaco or whatever. Yeah, they may be, but they did in the first sector of their career bring in a lot of money into this country. So, there's plenty of opportunities. But,
the funny thing was, I don't know how much you've read about the history of that. And I've got one.
ACDC?
Yeah.
I read the book on. I've got one book I've read on them. Yeah.
Englehart's book, Maximum Rock and Roll. Jesse Fink's book, The Youngs, and Jesse Fink's book also, On the Last Highway. Australia didn't. That was their launching pad, but they had to go overseas to get success. And when they came back to Australia, how I read it is that Australia didn't really support ACD that much when they came back from overseas. They were struggling here as well.
What you need to do, though, you need to put it in the context of Albert's. So I want you to remember who owned ACDC. So forget if they struggled.
I get that. I get that. But it's just, I think there's really a lot of people are misinformed with that whole rise of ACDC and what happened.
Well, you see, I look at it from a business perspective, and Albert's owned ACDC. So especially for those first 4 albums, as that was happening, and it was really starting to power overseas, 78, 79, 80. And they owned them, so the money was coming back to Albert's. So Albert's would be selling them off to international record labels, but that money would come back here to Albert's. They were recording here for those albums, so it's Albert's. The publishing was here. So there's a lot of money coming back in, Rob. A lot of money. But, of course, that would all change in the second phase of their careers when Albert's took a bit of a backdoor, but they were still kind of operate right through the 80s. It was operating via Albert's in Sydney. So there's still a lot of money coming in, still a lot of money. But like anything, anybody in any business will then venture towards a less taxable environment. So that's going to happen. But they're still brought in a lot of money. Yeah. If I said to you, Empire of the Sun, who I just mentioned, 23 million listeners per month, so it's a lot of money coming in each month. 23, what are we going to talk about there? We're going to talk about, that's, you might as well talk 100,000 100,000 per month, all right, just from Spotify. What are they getting from Apple and Deezer and YouTube? So they're based here. They're not based overseas. So that money's all here. And that's what we want. We want that because that money stays in this country. They get it. They spend it here, whether they buy properties or I don't know what they do. But that's where I'm coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, sure.
There's another section of that which is about the creatives and all that kind of stuff. But I think that there's plenty that we can do. But on the front line, we need to make sure that Australian music gets heard. Therefore, you've got radio, you've got television, you've got international live shows must have an Australian artist as a support. They must have them, and there must be a time limit too. Not 15 minutes, they've got to do at least half an hour, a half-hour set. Whether the payment to me has got nothing to do with it because you may have to pay yourself to be there, but it's usually $1,000 a show and has been for the last 30 years. But that is what you want to do, even with the AFL and the sports organisations bringing in international acts for the grand final. What you're telling me is we don't have anybody here. Are you kidding me? Of course we do. Why does it have to be Kiss at the AFL grand final? I might have liked it myself, but why does it need to be Kiss? Why can't it not be? Go on.
From someone that's had multiple experiences performing at AFL games, I'd really like for you to experience what that's like from a musician's point of view, and then hear what you think of how acts are treated at AFL games, because the crowd doesn't care. They are there to watch football. They do not care about the entertainment. And I've had that experience time and time and time again, and I've been there and watched other artists.
Are you saying it's not worth it? Not worth doing?
Well, you've got to change, and I've been working on this and examining this and struggling with this for years. It's the culture and the mentality of the sports way of thinking in this country compared with the arts way of thinking in this country. If you take the example of the American culture, sports and music are a symbiont creature in America. Everybody works together for the same outcome. The musicians support the artists, or are supporting the sports people, and the sports people are supporting the musicians to get a better vibe at the game, and everyone works together. And whether it's mums, dads, kids, sportsmen or musicians, the whole unit is one thing working towards a common goal, which is obviously to win or be successful and have strong community. Over here, there's a diversification between those things. And I've tried for years and years and years to implement live music at football games. And I've done it, and I've played it, and I've done it. The soccer is a better culture.
Yeah.
That they embrace that. But AFL, it's very difficult. So I think boiling that down in a quick summary, in my opinion, it's that what they're trying to do is get maximum impact, because people don't take any notice of anything lower than an artist like a Kiss or a Robbie Williams, or, to them to even notice what's going on. They're there to see their team win that game. They don't care about the music. And so that's a cultural thing which starts at school.
I think too, if you think about it, if you've got 50,000 people there and you've got a band playing and the volume can't be that great because they're playing in a little section, not on the ground, and therefore how good can the audio be so half the people don't even hear it properly anyway.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to do. If you get to experience it, I think you'd understand what I'm talking about, because I've talked to multiple musicians about the whole thing, and I think it's a cultural divide that we have in this country, and it really needs to be worked at from a school level and embrace music equally as much as they do sport. I think the balance is really out, and I think our culture suffers because of that, and I think it really needs more work.
Well, they're the areas.
Be able to support those things.
Well, they're really valid thoughts. And so what we get is, if I read out, what I read out earlier, there's this money being splashed out about, and we will never know where it got spent. And if we ever did, it'll be in years' times, and everybody's forgotten about it. And, that was 2 years ago. A classic one I can always mention, which goes back probably 25 years, was an Australian Arts grant that we looked up, and a particular person had gotten $20,000 back then, which was a lot of money, to go to Canada and busker. And that was his submission. He was buskering in Canada to promote himself and try and, get on the world stage. And I just thought, oh my God, are you serious? Are we serious? Not only that, he'd be spending all that money in Canada. There's the airfare, but outside of that, he'd be in Canada. He's got to spend it there. Well, we want the money spent here. I want it spent here in this country. Anyway, I bring the financial side of things, and as I said, Laneway Red is going to be a platform which we hope, and it's 12 months of building now. When it goes live, we hope will foster a lot of local talent and help with that. It is an international platform, of course, but with the relationship and partnership we're doing with APRA, and we will be able to foster a lot more artists there from Australia. And we hope these are the things that need to happen, where you get honestly paid for what happens, and also you can market correctly. You've got to be able to market, because if you can't market, you can't get to your audience. I'm running a campaign at the moment and it's not working. I'm getting thousands of views, but I'm not getting likes. This is on Meta. I'm not getting the likes and the shares. And so I'm going to have to rejig that. And, you've got to make sure you're massaging whatever you're working on at the time to make it work for your specific need. Now, with an artist trying to get to their core audience, you need to keep massaging that, and that's where you need to get to. And at the moment, we all just throw mud at the wall and we hope some sticks. Anyway, so that was a good discussion for today, Rob. I think that, two things. There's the conspiracy theories. Well, maybe not. Spotify is playing some kind of game. And, of course, they're not paying anybody with anymore. If you don't get 1,000 streams now, you don't get paid. And if you do not, and what they're moving to is lyrics that come up while the song's playing will no longer be available to non-subscribers, only to premium subscribers.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's coming. So everything they're doing is moving towards premium. And not the ad-funded. And so therefore, who's running the show? It's not the record companies, and you see Universal just came to a deal with TikTok, but we don't know what that deal is. It just, again, there was all kinds of conspiracy theories there, what was going on, but they've now come to an arrangement. Nobody knows. It's all business. The artist is the lower-hanging fruit that just gets bandied around as suits the corporations.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm looking at an email that's just come through here from the Conservatorium regarding, I had my graduation last week.
Congratulations, mate.
Thank you very much. And it was fantastic because I don't know whether you watched it, but when they read out my thesis title, which was Make a Change, the Experience, Identity and Culture of Pub Rock Music in Adelaide, South Australia, 1962 to 1994, Dr. Robert John Boundy. The applause was fantastic.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear.
And my supervisor said to me outside after we'd come out, because I was in the academic recession and all that, and it was a wonderful ceremony and wonderful tradition, And he said, I have never heard a response like that to somebody's thesis title before.
Probably.
And I had so many people come up to me and ask whether they could find a copy of my thesis.
Probably because it's contemporary, mate.
Well, it is, absolutely. And that was the impact that I just stood there and absorbed that feeling going, this is the power of popular music in a conservatory environment, and the people that are there could relate straight away. So that's got to say something. So I've just got an email referred on from Joe Hay, who is the general manager of Adelaide City of Music Limited. And
what is that?
I don't know.
Okay.
But it's got down the bottom, Adelaide City of Music, a UNESCO Creative City, which is Adelaide, and United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation.
Yeah.
And the email says also, because he was at the graduation ceremony, I noticed a PhD recipient thesis was on Adelaide's pub rock scene. Any chance you could make an introduction? Would be great to meet and hear about his findings. Well, Joe Hay, I'm here, and my number is all over YouTube and Facebook, and you can get in contact with me. But I'm going to send the guy an email anyway, because that's going to be an interesting to follow up.
Absolutely. That's fantastic, Rob. I mean,
absolutely what we're talking about is going, there's all this government rhetoric, lip service, whatever you can say, how they're supporting the arts. Now, I've spent a lot of years in my life getting to a point where I can actually publish a PhD thesis to get my doctorate on Australian popular music. And, it's starting to make a little bit of a difference, and people are starting to take notice. So, we just keep chipping away at it. And
never give up. Never give up.
No, that's why I really appreciate we're doing this with Laneway Music, Laneway Talks, because we get to be out there to a larger audience, and I've been getting really good feedback from a lot of people. So, shout out to all those people that are listening and supporting what we're doing here at Laneway. And,
I just want to finish off with, so how do you feel about the $300 you're going to get back for your power bill? Do you feel excited about that?
I will when I see it.
Right. So, therefore, you're happy that the millionaires...
Is that cash? Or?
Yeah. No, it's not cash. You're going to get it off your bill.
Oh, right.
You're happy that millionaires are getting it. So, Twiggy Forrest and Gina Reinhardt, so they're getting it. And because that's too hard to means test. It's too hard to means test, they said. And I thought, well, wouldn't it have been just a bit better to work out the too hard and give $600 or $700 back to the people on the incomes that actually need it? So we could have doubled. Now, remember what's happening here is that reduction in that bill goes into that basket of goods which measures the CPI index.
Yes.
So therefore, he's going to bring down inflation by whatever it was, 0.5%. And that's where it's going to happen from, because he's given it to literally everybody. So it goes in there, and they must have worked out the figure. But nobody's one or two people talked about it. I think, I don't know who it was. Someone talked about it, but nobody else is talking about it. And I was thinking, even this morning reading articles on it, oh, come on, surely we could have worked something out and given it back to the people that need it. Even the politicians were saying, on our salaries, we don't even need this. Why are we getting this? This is ridiculous. Anyway, we close it off on that. You get $300 back. That's fantastic. You won't get it the year after when electricity prices go up again, but you're going to get it in the next 12 months. So good luck. That buys a couple more loaves of bread for you, okay?
Yep, the price of bread, it will probably get 3.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. I'll talk to you next week.
No worries, Vince.
See ya.
Great chat. See you, buddy. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed that, there's more. Just search Laneway Talks for more great conversations.